different people are going to thrive different ways. So just pick what works for you. That would be like my advice for a new mom, and just go with it. And if someone says you have to do it this way, it's just like, well, it doesn't work for me. I'm not doing it that way. You just get through the newborn stage however you best get through it, and your baby is going to be great.
You find out what works for you, and that's what makes an 8th baby or a 5th baby so much easier than a first. I didn't have my stride yet. I didn't have confidence in this is how you do things. I thought we probably were ruining her if we weren't doing it this certain way. And now I know you just cannot mess it up. Like, you can do it however, and you can fix those habits later, and it's no problem.
The Now That We're a Family podcast.
Hey, Lisa, thank you so much for jumping on today. We just had a fun conversation over on your podcast, and now you're over here, and I'm excited to hear from you. So I feel like our entire audience knows you. You're one of our most requested guests, but for the 5 people who don't, could you introduce yourself and just say a little bit about what you do and where you're located and, what your life looks like right now?
Well, I'm sure there's plenty in your audience that don't know me. It's funny though, because I took my daughters with my mom and my sisters to New York City, and I never saw one person there who recognized me. But then I went to this small homeschool families gathering thing, and like every person there's, I'm like, okay, we know my niche. Okay, so I have a podcast called Simple Farmhouse Life, where I share kind of the same thing, but in audio form, that I also share on my blog and my YouTube channel, Farmhouse on Boone, which is from scratch food. After the pandemic, I got known for sourdough at this point. But I also do DIY, lots of like family recipes. I've really honed in on the food thing, but I also do like sewing. I'm a homeschool mom to 7 kids, and we are going to be expecting our 8th in July.
Wow, that is crazy. That's a great rundown of all the things, a very simplified version of all the things that you do. And you're pregnant with your 8th. We're due the same month. How are you just feeling?
I actually have really easy pregnancies relative to what I have heard other people talk about. So I'm doing fine. I have the early tiredness and morning sickness, nothing too bad. I might throw up a couple times and, you just feel nauseated the whole first trimester. After that, though, I really am always fine, like all the way to the end. So I know that that's unusual. I just don't know. I really have anything to complain with it.
Well, it sounds like you just don't complain because
I don't know. I truly don't have any discomforts, because like I have some sisters who, one of them's pregnant now, one has 6 kids, and I know them, and I know that they're not complainers. They're just not that type. And they both get this incredible rib pain. And what's funny is our legs all hit at the same spot, but I'm 2 inches taller. So I have this extra long relative to my body waist. And I think it truly does make things a lot easier. I don't have like they say if they sit, they have to do this. They can't go in cars. I have none of that. Like there is no discomfort under my ribs. So I think the long waist just maybe does truly make it a little easier on me.
Nice. Well, that's awesome. Who would have thought?
I know.
That's great. Has your pregnancy with this one been any different than your other 7?
Not really. I have very similar pregnancies. I have certain things, like I always have low iron. That's something that I have to deal with. I always have varicose veins. That's annoying. And then I always have the same first trimester where I just feel nauseated and tired, but not really extreme. Whereas like one of my sisters, she in half of her pregnancies is so sick she can't get out of bed. And in the other half, she's totally fine. So there's this major divide. Mine are all very much the same.
Wow. Well, that's nice. You know what to expect. And I know I'm curious because like, I don't know, like, obviously this 5th one for me has been way better than my 4th, but then, which is nice because at first I felt like, oh, great. after my fourth, I felt like, okay, there's this steady decline after each baby. If we keep going, I'm going to completely fall apart, So it's encouraging for me, one, to have kind of a redemptive pregnancy this time, but then also to hear from you too, expecting number 8, like you feel like this one hasn't been like totally different, even though you're older than you were with your first few and your body's gone through this a lot of times and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I hope that something doesn't throw me for a loop because I still have 7 weeks left. So things could change. And I have also this idea in my mind because my kids have all came around the same time relatively to the due date. And then also my labors have really not been bad. So I have these things in my head. And then, so hopefully I'm not just like blindsided.
That's great. No, I'm sure you'll be fine. Okay, so we touched on this a little bit, but I still want to ask it. How are you preparing to add an 8th baby on top of all that you do?
So I told Katie whenever she was on my podcast that I have not done anything to prepare. And every time that I'm pregnant, especially the last 3 or 4, I always have people asking me that question. And that's when I'm like, am I supposed to be doing something right now? So what I will do, which I haven't done yet, is I will get a pack of newborn diapers and I'll get birth supplies. That's something I need to do, collect the little list of birth supplies and maybe a couple of newborn outfits. I did get a new baby wrap because that's very important. I like to have the lightweight wrap for in the very beginning. And they're so lightweight that I usually have a few holes by the time the next baby comes. So those are my big plans. Oh, another plan that none of this have I done yet, but the other thing that we need to do is just practically is we need to swap around some kids. So there's always that whole like this kid needs to go in with this kid needs to go into the room with the crib, and then now we have because our youngest is still in our room currently, but before July I need to probably do the swap-a-roo.
Yeah, kind of transition everyone to their new sleeping arrangements. And
yes, I always am very resistant to do that because when things are working and then you imagine like what's it going to be like to put this kid in with this kid.
Yeah, how many children's bedrooms do you have? Like, do you have a lot of kids sharing a room or kind of like 2 or 3?
It's actually not bad. So our house was marketed as a 2-bedroom house because it's old and there's no closets, but they had like a sitting room and a dining room. And so we've reclaimed a lot of these spaces because we don't need dining rooms and sitting rooms. So we technically have 4 kid bedrooms and an adult bedroom. So it's actually really plenty.
Nice. Yeah, so you're able to split everyone up. That's not like a huge deal.
There's plenty of space. And I get people who are like, you're gonna need a bigger house now. And I'm like, actually, we have beds that nobody even sleeps in because kids will fall asleep on the floor. And like, there's one bed that isn't even being used right now. So the rooms, a few of the rooms are really large. So I mean, there's really actually plenty of space.
Yeah, it's kind of funny, the concept of, obviously for safety reasons, like you do need a bigger car at certain points when you're expanding your family. But it's really funny how often people assume, especially here in America, oh, you need a bigger house because you're having another baby. And it's like, I mean, I grew up with 11 kids in a 3-bedroom house.
I've heard your story of how, small and you can. I mean, I have a friend who lives in a tiny house, like a legitimate tiny house, and they have 10 kids. And I've been there, and it's a tiny house, and they do make it work. Like they have it set up in a really perfect way to where the living space is really big, and then they have bunk beds, like literally like a room that has several bunk beds. So I'm really happy to have my 2,400 square foot house. I feel like it's massive. We came from a 1,700 square foot house. So the thought that we need this bigger house, I'm like, this house is big, in my opinion. It's very ample and plenty. And my oldest, she'll be 15 this year. So we have all of these kids on deck who are approaching like teenagerhood. And so it's not like we're going to have, I don't think like we're going to have 8 teenagers. We're never going to have 8 teenagers. There's a wide range of kids. And so some will be moving out at some point, and then that's when the littler ones will get bigger. So I don't feel like there's this, we're sometime going to have like 10 adults living in this house. I don't think that's how it's going to be.
Yeah, I just love though how you mentioned like 2,400 square feet, and like some people would be like, and she thinks that's big for 8 kids. It's just
I do. It is so big. But we're like we talked about over on your or when you came on my podcast, very minimal in the possessions. And so it feels very like nothing feels very cluttered. There feels like a lot of space to spread out. We spend a ton of time outside. I mean, if as long as it's not under 20 degrees, which where we live, that's really not even that common. We spend time in the barn and in the garage, and just I don't feel like we're underfoot really. Like there's always children everywhere. It doesn't feel like that in this house.
Hey everyone, I want to take a quick moment to tell you about our online music academy called votebergmusicacademy.com. Katie and I actually started this online music academy 7 years ago, and over that time we've been able to see thousands of students go through our courses and learn how to play the guitar, the mandolin, the fiddle, the piano, the ukulele, and bring music into their home. And we really curated these lessons so that you're able to learn with your child, or you're able to learn by yourself and then bring music into your home and play with your kiddos. We even have it so that you can, subscribe to one course and have 3 of your kids take the same course. So it's really cost effective, and you're able to go at your own pace and bring music into your home. Go to votebergmusicacademy.com and check this out. Okay, listen up. This is where it gets really good. If you enter the coupon code YouTube at checkout, you will get 10% off each month's payment, because it's a subscription. It's a reoccurring payment. So if you put that code in, then it's 10% off each month. So, that can really add up over time. So bring some music into your family's home. Go over to votebergmusicacademy.com. I'll link it below. And you guys put in that coupon code and go learn how to play some piano, guitar, fiddle, mandolin, ukulele, your choice.
That's awesome. So as you are coming into basically you're having your baby in July, and then you're coming into a new school year too. Does any part of having a new baby seem daunting to you going into the fall? I mean, I know there's a lot of harvesting that happens in the fall too, and it's a big time online and all that. Or do you feel like I'll handle that when I get there? Or do you feel like you've thought through all that stuff?
I'm definitely I'll handle that when I get there. You're bringing up some good points I hadn't really thought about. But usually for me, well, I'm okay with letting certain things go. Like the garden is not going to be the best year ever. My husband is randomly extra interested in it this year, where he hasn't been in the past. And so we actually have a large garden planted. I really wasn't even planning on planting all the beds this year, because I know that we never had a July baby. So this is brand new for me. My fourth was born in late August, and that's the closest thing to it was already basically moving into the fall, and then all of the other kids were born in the fall and winter. And so I am sort of thinking about that with the garden. But then as far as the other stuff, I mean, I know this is always harder for new moms to hear, but the baby's the least of my concerns. Whenever it comes to all the other stuff, I'm if I was going to have to cut back on stuff, I'll have to do it regardless of the baby.
Yes. No, and that totally makes sense. I mean, you've done it so many times at this point, and newborns are very low maintenance once you know what to expect. I think it's the lack of accurate expectations and the lack of history, knowing what to do, that makes a newborn so stressful. Once you know, it's really easy for the most part, unless you get a really stressful newborn, which that does happen.
I've never really had a newborn that wouldn't latch on, or there's a lot of difficulties that can happen that I haven't experienced, and that would be a whole different ball game. So far I've had very straightforward newborns where if you put them in the wrap, you sleep with them in your bed, which I know you do sort of different stuff, but that's what's very easy for me. Where it starts to become harder is more around when I have to start to figure out the schedule. That's when I start getting a little bit more worried. So we're not really through the fall, it should all be fairly easy until I'm trying to figure some of that stuff out. And that's where there'll be some sleep deprivation and all of that. And we'll just assess that then.
Yeah. You've got enough going on. I don't need to add anything more to your plate. No, I do love though. I always love having you on because I think that obviously we do things different when it comes to like the newborn stage with I'm scheduled, you have your form of doing it that's like looser, but I feel like it just works for both of us. Yeah. And I think that that is like the best representation of like what motherhood should be. It's like, do what works. There's not like a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. This is how you mother a newborn. It's like different people are gonna thrive different ways. So just pick what works for you. That'd be like my advice for a new mom, and just go with it. And if someone says you have to do it this way, it's just like, well, it doesn't work for me. I'm not doing it that way. You just get through the newborn stage however you best get through it, and your baby is going to be great regardless of what you do. Yeah. If you love it and feed it.
You and I both, as like content creators, you do get so much input from commenters that you learn this, like, okay, everybody has very strong opinions, and no matter how many times you tell me that, lady, I disagree. And so you're right, like you figure out what works for you, and then you just put on your, you just like don't listen. And not that there's not advice to be learned, but you find out what works for you. And that's what makes an 8th baby or a 5th baby so much easier than a first, because my first was not easy. And looking back, it had nothing to do with her. She was just like all the other babies. She wasn't special in her needs or anything. However, it was so difficult for me because I hadn't figured out that. Like I didn't have my stride yet. I didn't have confidence in this is how you do things. I thought we probably were ruining her if we weren't doing it this certain way. And now I know you just cannot mess it up. Like you can do it however, and you can fix those habits later, and it's no problem.
Yes, absolutely. It's really more like, I think we listen to the opinions. I think there's a lot of fear mongering. So people listen to the opinions like how I don't want to mess up my baby, but that's really not it. Why you would want to try different things out is to be like, what works for you as the mom and what works for your schedule. As soon as it works for you and your schedule, just put on the things, put on your earbuds, be like, I've got it. It works for me. I'm good, because the baby's really going to be great either way. And people love to make you feel like you're going to mess up your child, and it's just not true. Yeah. Okay. So summer routines, do you guys school through the summer? Do you have summer routines? Is it just kind of like a free for all?
We always have big and good intentions, and then slowly, like we never have this, we're going to be done with school on May 31st kind of thing. We just, as like, okay, it's time to start planting the garden, and oh, it's so nice outside, let's go do this. We just always drop things, and the next thing you know, it's like, I guess we're done with school, So we are done with school for the year. We have routines, but in a not near as structured as school time kind of way. We do a lot. Like as soon as we get off these interviews, I'm going to take the kids up to the pool. I really love summer. Summer is my favorite season, even though I'm sweating in here right now. And so I try to recognize it for the very short season that it is, and just do all the things. We're going to the pool tomorrow. We'll probably pack a picnic. And I always end up regretting my summer if I don't do all of that kind of stuff. So it's sentimental for me, I feel like.
Yeah, it's just time to get out and enjoy the weather and do what you can to be out in it. Yes. I love that. So that's kind of like a main objective in the summer is like, okay, let's just enjoy this, get outside, do the fun things.
Yeah. And I even feel good if like other people in my family do stuff like that, even feels good to me. So I will have Luke take some of the kids, like usually it's the oldest 4, on the river for a canoe trip. They do that quite often in the summer. In fact, I really think that we need to get one on the books, because there's not one, like they've already done it once, but they need to do it again next week, and they need to do it a lot because summer's really short. And yeah,
I love that. A canoe trip. That is
that's
so
something
cool.
we do in Missouri. We call it float trips here. But yeah, I don't know if some states do it, but anyways, yeah, that's on the summer bucket list. That needs to happen a lot.
That's awesome. That's like camping for us. The kids, we went one time last year, and then with the baby coming, I was like, okay, well, we got to go in June because I don't really want to
Yeah.
go camping with the newborn.
Now, do you do a
So,
tent camping?
yeah, tent camping.
I gave that up a long time ago. We grew up camping, and then after a certain number of kids, we were like, we shall never camp again. I just, yeah.
We didn't do it much in my family either with that I remember with all the kids. It's a lot of stuff.
Yeah, and it's okay with everybody over age, I want to say 4-ish, but anybody under that age, it's no fun with. That's just my opinion, but I need to send Luke and the older kids on that.
Yeah, exactly. Get them out camping. Yeah, the kids are definitely driving that. Do you guys have kind of like, do you keep some kind of morning routine or chore routine or nighttime routine?
Yeah,
throughout the summer?
We do have a dairy cow. And so because of that, it really does structure our day around chores. So in the morning, we milk around 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. So usually we are all out by 8 a.m. Certain kids do other chores. Luke and I milk the cow. So that does get us sort of on a routine because we have to get out to do that. And then we try to have bedtime done before the night milking, which also puts us a bit on a routine. We can't stay out somewhere till 9 o'clock because we have those structured portions of the day. But then we have a few things, like my son is in baseball, so he has a couple games each week, and that changes stuff a bit. But we do sort of have routines that center around farm chores.
Yeah, that makes sense. Someone asked if you had a chore chart, and that kind of made me smile because I don't picture you as having a chore chart, but maybe you do.
No. I do not. Those kind of things are so overwhelming to me. All of that. And for certain people, they can't imagine. And I hear moms will be like, oh, what you have to do. This is another one of those things. You get these sticks and you write the chores on the sticks. Then you put the thingy on the wall. And then you tell the children they pick out this if they do this. And I'm like, see, you lost me like 5 steps ago. This is so far from the way that I do things. And I think for some people it works great, but no, there will be no chore charts.
Yeah, like I literally kind of laughed. I was like, yeah, I just picture this like sticker chart in your farmhouse kitchen where the kids are like putting a sticker on when they get their chore done.
But so hard to me, like so overwhelming. I don't know why, but yeah.
Yeah, it does. Whenever it comes to charts and kids, like I do a lot of planning for myself. I like my own spreadsheets and random stuff like that.
Yes.
But chore charts to me, it's like something else. It's like a to-do list item. Like I have to follow through on it. So we do it like 3 days and then I don't want to have to keep up with it anymore.
Yeah. So. Yes. It always, because I tried some of that earlier in my motherhood because that's what we're supposed to do. This is what was working for certain people. And it was very difficult for me to keep up with.
Yeah, same here. Okay, so I would love to hear from you. Any tips to prevent the frustration and overwhelm that comes from having this perfectionistic mindset in parenting and in homemaking? I think that's a question that someone asked, and I think that you do a very good job not being perfectionistic, at least in everything I see. You have this like get it done mindset. But have you ever struggled with perfectionism at all, or has that just not been your struggle?
Yes. So I will say that earlier in motherhood, I spent so many nights, and I'm sure maybe younger moms mostly can relate to this, where you lay down in bed and then you think through all the things that happened that day and you beat yourself up because it didn't go how you wanted it to. I think it helps to have older kids. So now that my oldest is 14 and a half, and then, I have them every other year going on down. You have some proof that even when you don't do things perfectly, because nothing that I've done has been perfect ever, that it still turns out okay. We spend a ton of time with our kids. My husband and I, we're with the kids all the time. One of us is. And so yes, things are done imperfectly, but yet we're trying our best. And I think that ends up weighing out a lot of things. Like they see that we care for them, we love them, we're trying, we don't do things perfectly. And yeah, I'm not going to say that like there's not moments where I still have those types of feelings like, oh no, we're messing this up. And then you worry about it. But it does happen less and less when you have kids on the other end of, like I used to hear when my kids were younger, if you can't control them when they're 2, you can't control them when they're 14 or whatever age they might have picked. And it's very hard to control a kid at age 2. And I mean, you can try, and you definitely should. You should definitely follow through and all that kind of stuff. But even imperfectly, I feel like I have some very nice, respectful young people. And so I'm like, well, I guess you don't have to do it perfectly.
Yeah, no, I love that. It's not like you have to hit these like it's, oh, well, if you've not hit this mile mark, then you've messed up on that child and they're just a lost cause. Like relationship can be regained at any point in a parenting relationship. The child can mature at any point along their life. And it's not like again, that's just like another fear-based concept because you have a really tough 2-year-old that's a really great teenager.
Yes. And that's another thing I've learned having 7 kids is just how different these kids are. And you will see, I mean, well, maybe some would never get like a trying or a challenging child, but there are some kids that are, no matter what you do, just more challenging individuals, you know? And so you think like when you have a little baby, you feel like you have complete control over molding them into exactly what you want. And that's a very huge responsibility if you truly believe that like what I do is how you're going to turn out. And then you notice just how much personality they have that they contribute to it, that you can do everything you want. And they're going to end up still different than all the rest of your kids, even though they all grew up in the exact same house. Or in my sister's case, we love to compare because we spend so much time together. And just the genetic differences because of who her husband is and who mine is and how different we are. It's just, you start to realize that like you only have so much control over how this whole thing works out. And when you think you have all the control, it's really scary because you can literally make or break this child.
Yeah, that is good. That's really good to hear and to keep telling. I feel like that's important because I think that we could put so much pressure on ourselves and also put so much pressure on our kids. And that's just like not going to be the healthiest environment for them or for us when we're both like totally fearful of what's going to happen and trying to control the situation. Like you said, there's just so many variables. We're just like called to be faithful to teach our children. And then the rest is up to the Lord. Yeah. And how he designed that individual.
Right. Exactly. And obviously I'm not saying like, well, just, let them go because there's nothing you can do. Obviously, like we homeschool, we invest a lot in our children. So I'm not in any way saying that, but I have found comfort in that there is only so much I can do. It's just been very obvious as my kids have aged that there's only my part. And then there's only so much I can control.
Yeah, it's really funny because I was one of those harder kids for my parents. I think they had 3 of us. We all know who we are.
Okay, yeah. Well, when you have 11 kids, there's got to be 1 or 2. And if you feel like you need to be humble, just have another child. Because if I would have stopped at a certain number, I would have been like, I am awesome. This is so easy. I know exactly what I'm doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the Lord just like throws you a curveball. And like you said, it's humbling. Yeah, I think that totally happens with kids. But that's the thing. I feel like my parents were concerned when I was a toddler. Like,
you were the first, right? So yeah, they were probably really concerned.
Yeah, exactly. When you have like a kid that is fighting you on everything and you're the first, that's just taking a lot of energy and effort. And then as a teenager, they were so concerned about me. As a young adult, they were so concerned. And then I like got married and now I'm like, they just think
it all worked out.
It's amazing. They're just like, wow, we just love you and Elisha so much and all your kids and everything. And it's like, the Lord's faithful.
Yeah.
But I do feel bad for all that I put them through. Okay, so how do you stay motivated in times when you're depleted? So pregnancy, maybe that early postpartum stage where you're feeling more nauseous. You always have a lot going on. Or maybe, just like when you're just feeling wiped out. How do you stay motivated and keep going?
Yeah, well, I definitely will decrease certain things. Like in my first trimester, I wasn't launching any new products or writing a book. And, there were mostly what happens with me in those types of seasons is more than feeling physically exhausted. I just feel, well, like you said, like the lack of motivation. Right at this stage of my life, I'm in I have pretty strong habits of getting certain things done just because they're just very automatic. And so there's that inertia that you have to like build momentum back up from. And I don't feel like I really end up having that. I just decrease certain things during certain times. Um, yeah, so how to stay motivated. I create lists for myself. I always have things I need to accomplish and, do I really have to every day? Well, in my head, yes, I have to get them accomplished. And so I do have a habit of having a list for every single day, no matter what, except for Sunday. And I don't ever just let myself off the hook to not accomplish it. I mean, truly, I don't. There might be less things on it during those times, but I am in the habit of accomplishing what's on the list. Now, that's not to say there aren't a few things each day if I've made the list too long that get pushed to the next, but they do eventually get done because I'm pretty serious about that, about my list.
Yeah, you have that internal motivation. You know what needs to get done, and you keep yourself accountable to those things.
Yeah, and it is easier to okay, so I run a business from home. That's how our family, my husband and I both, this is what we do. And it's easier to stay motivated for something whenever it works. So like for me to have on my list, shoot these clips for this video, that was a much harder thing to push through whenever I was building things because it might have got 5 views. And so how do you convince yourself when you're in your first trimester of pregnancy to shoot a video for something that's going to get 5 views? You would have had to talk to me like 5 years ago because I don't remember how I got past that. But it is easy now because it's like, well, I already know it's going to work. And so there is something with that. But I know at some point I did this when that wasn't the case, but I was younger back then. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I feel like, I know I was trying to think back to that too. I think there is this motivation that almost comes from like, you see what other people are doing maybe, or like, if I don't do this, then I don't get to where I want to be. Like, at least when I was starting YouTube and there was like, at the time, it was like, you have to post 3 times a week or whatever. And that's what everyone was saying. You have to post 3 times a week, a video. And so I think in my mind, I was like, well, I want what these people have. And if I don't post my 3rd video this week, then I'm never going to get there. And I know I don't want to be here forever. So like, I will do the video, like regardless of how many views. Like you're kind of trusting someone else for their confidence in a system that works before you have a system that works.
Very, very true. And I've always said with something like that, you have to actually believe it's going to work. And I don't think there's any lying to yourself. Like, yeah, I believe it. Like you have to actually believe it's going to work. And I think I did always believe that. And so even when there wasn't proof, like you said, I had seen people go before me and I'm like, okay, well, there you go. There's the proof. And then I've always been motivated by seeing any progress, any improvement. So as long as things were growing a little bit, I was pretty excited about it. And anytime I'm excited about something, I can keep doing it. Things that I'm not, like I have tons of things I put off, tons of things that I really think I want to do. And then I'll lie and say that like time is the problem. It's not. I just don't want to do it. And so I guess with that, like, how do I stay motivated? I do always have something I'm very excited about. And when you're excited about something, it doesn't really matter how fatigued you are because you want to do it. And I have a lot of things in my life like that aren't hard because I'm so excited about them.
Yeah, actually, we talked about this a little bit on our podcast because my husband had that realization where he was like, you realize people talk about parenting little kids is like, it's the most fatiguing time of your life. You're going to be so exhausted and all these things, but it's not necessarily true. It's just like we focus on that because maybe we aren't excited about it or we don't get why it should be taking all of our energy. Whereas like you talk to a college student that's like stoked about their degree and their friends and everything they've got going on, and they're exhausted, but that's not the first thing they tell you. They tell you what they're excited about. Or like the young entrepreneur that's doing a startup or whatever the case may be. It's like when you're excited about something, you don't just talk about how tired you are all the time. You're tired, but you're just excited about the thing, you know?
Yeah. And you might not even notice that you're tired, because I have people tell me like, you look so tired. I'm like, if I am, I didn't notice. Like, I guess I have just stuff that I'm really into doing because I don't feel tired. Maybe I am, but if I am, I don't know it.
That is great. Yeah. Sometimes we have that adrenaline too. And that just like, I don't know, desire to keep going, which is great. Yeah, I think that's really good. And that makes a lot of sense. Okay. So I do want to kind of hear, do you have homemaking systems that you could like pinpoint? I know you have a lot of flows. You have a lot of things that you just like naturally do, and they're so second nature to you. You probably don't even like put a name on them. But if you could mention like 2 or 3 home management systems that keep your home running smoothly, what would those be?
Okay. I think the first one is laundry every day. I know a lot of people have the weekly laundry system, and I feel not overwhelmed by laundry. And I think that's because we just do laundry all the time. And also I'm not super particular about it. So I'm not super particular about sorting. Like if there's something that's like black and it'll get towel fuzz, that's about the extent of the sorting that we'll do, or if you have new jeans or whatever. So throwing in about 2 loads of laundry a day, making sure that you're just, revisiting washer, dryer we have a couple sorting baskets, and it's very streamlined process. It also really helps that our laundry is on the main floor and it's kind of where we all live. So that makes it really easy to constantly visit laundry. And I think that helps to not get overwhelmed with that. And then also just cleaning constantly. So like in the kitchen, I never go from like, I might make like 2 or 3 sourdough things in a row in the same mixer, but then like in between that, and then if it's time to make lunch, I like to get everything clean and wipe the surfaces down and just make it to where things don't ever get to an overwhelming point. So like if one of my kids loves to cook, she's not as good at this yet. And so that's something that I'm constantly like, okay, we have to clean in between. Like if we don't want this stressful in here, we have to constantly keep this kitchen clean. And then I don't know, I don't like to leave jobs unfinished. So I don't go to bed with a messy kitchen, or like I'll go to bed with, pillows on the floor and things like that. That's no problem. But I do like to at least have my workspaces very clean. And then an overall habit is just keeping things really minimal to the point where it's not hard to get them cleaned up. I've gotten my home very streamlined. I think it happened when we moved here. I majorly decluttered the other house. We didn't have to move. And then ever since then, I've just kept things very decluttered, just constantly decluttered, so that it never gets too overwhelming of a mess.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about this over on your podcast, just like that decluttering thing and not letting your home even be capable of getting that dirty. I think of that even when you talk about dishes in the kitchen and stuff like that. Now I'm not as gourmet of a cook as you are. I don't know what the word is.
I don't know about the gourmet.
But you do all the things. But for myself, I find that, okay, I just have something that helps me clean as I go is I only have like 1 stew pot. I only have 1 saucepan. I only have 1 muffin tin, or like kind of just one of everything really. And so it's like if I'm doing a big meal prep day or if I'm going to cook something else, I have to wash that pot out to be able to put something else in.
Right.
And it keeps the dishes from getting like overwhelmingly full because I've got to use that. So it kind of forces that kind of clean as you go thing, which has been really helpful.
Yeah. When it gets too overwhelming in there, it's really impossible to want to cook the next meal if your if your kitchen feels gross. And like, I have a lot of helpers. My husband and I, we both jump in and do the dishes. My kids do the dishes. But one thing I notice is that if I'm for some reason out of the house, say I'm like out to dinner with friends, which does not happen hardly ever, but if it did, I've noticed that I like they will get like all the dishes done, and like they'll get all the dishes done, but then I like to every single meal wipe off the counters, wipe the front of the cabinets. Like, have you ever had that happen where you walk in and it still just doesn't feel clean? I am really particular. Like, it always needs a mom wipe. And I know I could train them to do all that and everything, but that's one thing I noticed. I'm like, yeah, the dishes are done, but like, we need to get this place not so grimy.
Yeah, no, as you're talking, I'm like, I need to do that with my cabinets because I do the main surfaces, but my cabinets gross me out. And I don't think I clean them. I don't do it often enough. And so stuff sticks on there.
Right.
And I think, I'll just go wipe it off. And then it's like, okay, that's like really stuck on. And now I'm just like unmotivated and go do something else. So it's good to hear from you on that. It's like, okay, consider it like another surface, because I obviously wipe down my counters all the time. I just need to keep up on the cabinets.
Yeah, I like working in my kitchen. I do not feel good about it when it's dirty. So, I mean, I'm not saying like I don't like get out the vinegar and like really clean it all the time or anything like that.
Yeah.
But I do just wipe down all the surfaces, keep the surfaces very decluttered, put things back in the pantry, like the blender base and those, the Instant Pot, those things that if you're not using it, I put it back in the pantry, I wipe the spot, and I just try to keep it very clean so that I'm always motivated to go in there and cook something. And another thing, like, I think people think is so crazy, but we don't have a dishwasher. And I feel that it's easier to not have a dishwasher. I know it's so controversial and people are like, you're crazy. I'm like, but it really is, because we're not super particular about our dishes. And I think the reason is because we cook so much that it's not like that's going to get put in the cabinet and not used for another week. Like, it's just going to get used again in 2 seconds. So we just are constantly like wiping the dishes and then reusing them. And when we had a dishwasher, it felt like, well, I'd put them in there dirty. And then if we didn't run it then, and then I'm already on to the next meal, and then I need the tool, and then I have to open it, and just, I don't know, I felt like things were dirtier and nothing was ever done when I did it. I'm not saying like someday I might find a need for a dishwasher, but right now I feel like it's easier just to stay like more on top of stuff.
Wow. Okay. That is super cool, because I do relate with you on feeling like, okay, especially because I do have such few items. If I'm not like immediately running the dishwasher after I fill it, then I have to go back and I'm grabbing the knife out of there and I'm rinsing it off anyways because it was dirty in the dishwasher.
And it's easier to rinse it off whenever you just used it. And I wear an apron all day, every day. And I will cut the avocado, wipe it, go into this, put it back on and I know people are like, that's disgusting.
Oh no, that's
we don't get sick from it. Like, I've been doing homemaking this way for a long time, and there haven't been any consequences. So like, if I cut the avocado, instead of taking that and like putting it in the dishwasher, letting it run, putting it away, I just will cut the avocado, wipe my apron, put it back on the little knife block thing, and then, or the magnet. And then I wear an apron all day. I really do, not just for my videos. And then I wash my apron at night. So it's always like a brand new tea towel that I'm wearing all day. But it's just a constant working kitchen. It's never like, I don't know. It's never like I'm ever putting it on pause long enough to run a dishwasher, which is why it hasn't been something very convenient for me. I will say, for a while there, we were getting like 5 gallons of milk a day, and then we dried off one of the cows. And the amount of jars, I was like, okay, that is where I would love a dishwasher, would be for those jars.
I love this. I'm like so inspired right now. Okay, so real quick, where do you sew all your aprons, or do you buy them some places?
I would love to, but just, I don't.
Okay, because I love your aprons. I think they're so cute. And then I go to purchase an apron, and all I can find is the really like boxy, like chef aprons. you know?
Okay, yeah, I like the ones that are very soft, like they're like the
Yeah.
flour sack material. And yeah, like I think people think I wear an apron just to be like cutesy homemaker. And I'm like, actually, I wear an apron all the time. Like I literally have an apron on the floor here because I had to take, I'm like, oh, we're jumping on the interview. I just truly enjoy wearing one because I'm just always, I love working in my kitchen. I really do. I enjoy cooking. I enjoy trying new things, experimenting with recipes, and then obviously my business relies on that too, and so that makes it easier to stay motivated to be in the kitchen. But yeah, having an apron is something very useful.
I love that. Okay, well, I need to get a link to where you get your aprons or something. I've looked underneath your videos for apron links.
I need to put that down there, don't I?
Yeah, put it down in your next one because I do need an apron, and that makes so much sense. Just having the towel always on you, because I'm always like grabbing for a dish towel, and it's so annoying. Okay, one more question about the dishes though. Do you have a like drying rack on your counter? Is that where do you like set it there and then you'll take it out of the drying rack and go do your thing?
Yeah, so we have an old sink with a drain board, and so that's where the drying rack sits. Usually there's a couple kids in there with me, and we'll oftentimes dry and put away if there's too many dishes, and sometimes we'll just let them drip dry and then instantly reuse them again. So it just depends on like how many dishes we had, if we're going to put them away. Usually at the end of the night, if it's a dinner, I'll always have a couple of kids drying and putting away. So it's just a process. I just feel like I like better just getting it done and not having like gross dishes sitting there waiting for me. That's just my preference.
Yeah, no, I really like that. I'm going to really consider how I could do that in my home. And I love also how you mentioned going to bed. There's obviously like having a perfectly clean house before we go to bed is very hard to achieve, and I don't do the whole house, but having like your main spaces clean so you aren't waking up the next day to stuff that's undone the day before. I think that's something that happens a lot in homemaking, is like it never ends. So instead of just like, oh, I get to wake up, my house is beautiful, it's a reset, we kind of have that with our weeks on Fridays, doing the bathrooms and the deep cleaning all really only happens one day, and then I get to enjoy it for the weekend and it's all reset. But like sometimes we have to put those deadlines in our lives because it's not like they're going to put themselves there.
Right. Yes. Yeah. It's just, for me at this point, it's just a habit that I enjoy doing. I don't like going to sit down whenever there's still a mess in the kitchen. I just prefer for it to be cleaned up. Now, if there's something like we have some kind of event and we're out till 9 o'clock or something, which wouldn't happen much, but if it did, I'm okay just pushing off the work till the morning. I just mean in my normal flow, we keep up on stuff.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, thank you so much, Lisa. I'm going to go ahead and end this interview because, well, my kids are back.
Yeah, it's time.
And you've got to go to the pool, and
yes,
we've got
ma'am.
stuff to do. But thank you so much for jumping on this interview. I really enjoyed the luxury of being able to talk with you for almost 2 hours and glean from you. So thank you so much. And for those who are watching this interview, there is another interview over on Lisa's podcast that we will eventually link down below, depending on when we post these two separate interviews. But can you tell us real quick where people can find you?
Yes. So if you love podcasts, I have the Simple Farmhouse Life podcast. It's here on YouTube, or depending on where you're watching, YouTube, Spotify, all those different places. And then my main way that I share content is with my YouTube channel, Farmhouse on Boone, and my blog, farmhouseonboone.com.
Awesome. So we will have all those things linked down in the description box. And thank you again so much for jumping on with me today.
All right. Thank you.